clarity type thing that you look at, and how do you decide which heads to pair with which baits?
So most of the time, those tournaments is real clear compared to what we're used to fishing. Grenada looks like chocolate milk compared to most of these lakes. So everything we go to is clear. You want something as natural as you can get it, something gray, something that looks like a minnow in the clear water. And sometimes when it's like that, you'll be casting to them instead of dropping on them because you can't get close enough to them black crappie. They're a little more aggressive. Um, in that muddy water, you want something that's got some black on it, black and chartreuse, June bug and chartreuse, black and orange, something like that.
Do you mix and match head color with, or do you try to make them combine together? Like you might have an orange head with that black and chartreuse. Or how do you choose what you're going to use?
Usually in the clear water, we keep it neutral, like just an unpainted lead head. And in the muddier water, you want something that's like bright orange, bright yellow, something that gets their attention. Because you got to get it really close in that muddy water and a couple of inches of it.
Anybody out here have any questions just yet? Or do you just want us to keep talking? I'm good at that, so I can keep doing that. Okay.
So you're always looking for the big fish. You get the block, let's say, stay suspended. Bigger ones that are away from the group, they pretty much sit there suspended and they move.
Yeah, let me give the question. So when he sees them fish on live scope, the big ones, do they move around a lot, or are they suspended in like maybe outside of a group or something, and they stay there?
So usually, like you're coming up on them on a trolling motor, about 40 foot out is where you're going to see them, and at that time you're going to start hitting your brakes. We got power brakes on the boat to slow down, and then you ease up to them. And most of the time you get to them, they're kind of just fluttering around, and then that's when you get the chance to drop on them. They're usually moving, and then when you see them, you try to sit still and put the bait on. And you do have to chase them if they don't sit still.
So the power brakes, that's kind of new, and I don't know if you guys have seen them, but they're mounted on the back of the transom of the boat, separate to a power pole. But they're actually literally trolling motor type things that you can control from the boat, but you actually can use those to not only stop you quicker, but also to troll with. Correct?
Well, they got a nudge switch that you can hit to move forward. We don't use it. Usually you don't need to go forward, but when you put your foot on the pedal, it's backing you up. You got two 40-pound thrust trolling motors on each side, on the back, on the actual away from the poles, and then now they got a new one out that we're running called the Sidekick that actually mounts to the power poles.
How quickly will those stop your boat? Say you're on a trolling motor and you're moving up into, and you see a fish 50 feet out. You want to stop, like you said, that 40-foot range to be able to start creeping. How much time will it take for that power brake to actually stop that boat dead?
So let's say the fish is at 50 foot, we usually got the trolling motor on 8 or 9, pretty much wide open. You got to cover as much water as you can in these things. So when you see the fish out there at 50 foot running on around 2 miles an hour, when you stand switch, the fish will be at 40 foot or closer. I mean, between 35 and 40 foot, when you set the brake down, it'll get you stopped.
So in 15 feet, you can dead stop your boat with those power brakes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I've seen guys in the past that there's a technique in bass fishing called
strolling.
Well, that's a West Coast technique. Strolling is something where you'll see the trolling motor get put on, and say you're bottom fishing, split shot rig, Carolina rig, even a jig, and they'll throw it out behind the boat, and they'll use the trolling motor to stay on a contour. In the West, it's legal. In a Bassmaster tournament, it's not. You can't manipulate dragging with the trolling motor. It's kind of a gray area for power brakes in the bass world, because if you manipulate the boat backwards with the bait out there and you're dragging the bait, you're technically strolling. They don't allow it. But yeah, that's I'm trying to think of what they called it, long lining with a crankbait, where they make a cast with it and they pull out a bunch of line and they pull the trolling motor back. They're supposed to leave the spool loose. Is that a technique you guys use with it to pull back away from a fish, to where you kind of long line something where maybe you throw on them and then you just kind of pull back with the brakes?
No, I know what you're talking about bass-wise. That way you can get the crankbait out there further and back way up where you can get it dive deeper. But on these crappie, you can get close enough, you can cast through them far enough without having to do that.
So they're not as spooky as other fish, is what you're saying?
Right.
Okay. How close is this? I mean, obviously water clarity makes a difference. But how close do you feel in a tournament situation that strike zone tends to be black crappie?
On a black crappie, if you get it kind of close, it's going to come out of the treetop. I mean, within 5-10 foot. If the water's clear, the clearer the water, the further they can see it. They'll come out there and get it. A white crappie on Grenada in that mud, you got to be within inches of his nose or he ain't going back.
What's your favorite to fish for, white or black?
I like the white crappie because you don't have to chase them all over the place.
You know where they're at. Okay, so, but in tournaments you target the black crappie because they're bigger most of the time, correct?
Yeah, if we go to a lake that's got both of them, usually we're after the black crappie. But in Mississippi, you know, Grenada, Sardis, Arca Butler, Enid, there's not many black crappie, so they're all one on white crappie.
Okay, and those are kind of brush pile fish more than anything?
Most of them are as far as numbers, but the bigger fish is always up more shallow, roaming out in the open, eating shad, looking for bait.
Okay. Have you spent any time on Neely Henry?
No, sir.
No, sir. Okay, what's your lake around here that you might have fished? Weiss, maybe?
A long time ago, probably the closest around here is probably Pickwick,
Okay.
maybe Wheeler.
So, tips for people that are going to go out and get started with crappie fishing. What would be your most important tip that you could give them to get started?
What, live scoping or just catching
Just
crappie?
catching crappie.
This time of year, it's hard to beat a crankbait. Start out, throw it out there as far as you can, Pico crankbait, flick the bell over and engage the motor. You start catching them, then you can get more advanced. That's my favorite way to catch them, but you just can't catch a weight to win tournaments.
Did you say a pink crappie? A pink crankbait?
Pico,
Pico.
the brand.
Okay.
They'll dive 15 to 17 foot with the right amount of line out on 30-pound braid.
You're throwing them on braid.
Yes, sir.
Do you have to put a leader on them?
A little snap, clip snap, tied onto the crankbait.
But a monofilament or a, nope, just straight braid. Interesting. Any questions out here yet for Clay? Not yet, okay. So you became a customer of Bucks Island about a year and a half ago, correct?
I think it was 21.
Okay.
The end of 21.
And you're currently fishing out of a Predator, correct? A Falcon Predator?
Yes, sir.
And you're going to go to a 195 is what I'm hearing. How have you chosen the boats that you compete out of?
Well, that 21 Predator's a barge, man, and them tight little places, it's hard to move it, turn it around,
Gotcha.
all that. I think the 195 is the best boat that you can get for the width of the deck, the length of the boat, the speed. I think, and it's a lot cheaper also.
Do you use the spider rigs and all that stuff, or are you having to handhold everything?
We got 2 rod holders on the back, high-tech rod holders. They got 4 on each side. When we pull crankbaits other than that, it's just single pole fishing.
Okay, yeah, live scoping, that makes sense. What's the best overall head size? If someone had to choose one, what weight would you suggest that they use?
Like casting to the bank, catching them.
Yeah. Let's do it that way. Casting to the bank, maybe around some dock poles and brush piles.
I think casting, I'd say a 24th ounce. That's about the perfect fall rate. Ain't too heavy and too light. It seems to get the best reaction. Live scoping, I'd go with the heaviest thing you can get away with it. They'll still bite. That way you can move it faster and stay on the fish.
And it gets down to them quicker when you make the cast.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Israel. Okay. So the question is if you're getting started in crappie fishing and you're new and maybe you're bank fishing, what's the best basic retrieve to start with? Am I hearing it right? Okay. How would you cause that retrieve to get started so that you can kind of see what it is?
Well, you want to be looking for structure, brush, something. Cast it out there. When you get around the stuff, just let it go all the way to the bottom and just ease it back in. Kind of like a football jig, bass fishing, but not as much as up and down. Just throw it out there, let it hit the bottom, and ease back in. Kind of keep it around the cover in more shallow water.
Okay, so let's describe your setup first for your casting fishing and then for your live scope fishing. Tell me the rod, You obviously name brands. You have your sponsors, the reel setup, the line you use for a casting presentation, and then do the same for your jigging presentation.
Casting, we got Charlie Brewer slider reels, 1039 7-foot casting rod with 4 to 6 pound TSP line clear, depending on the color of the water. And then on the long pole, Charlie Brewer reel, 16-foot 1039 and 15 pound P line.
16 foot.
Yeah, 16, and there's in a couple of weeks they're supposed to have an 18 out. We'll be trying it. The further you can get from them, the better you can get the bait on.
So I'm assuming this is pretty strong.
Sore, yeah.
You're having to hold that rod up all the time. Yes, sir.
You said you catch some on crankbaits. What kind of crankbaits do you use to catch crappie with?
Let me get the question. He said he wants to clarify what crankbaits he's using because he says he catches them on crankbaits, and the gentleman wants to know what crankbaits they are.
Pico brand, Pico. I can get with you after this and show you a picture of the one.
Size of the bait, kind of profile.
It's kind of the size of a Bandit 300.
Is it obviously you're sponsored by Pico, and that's someone that you work with? But is a Bandit 300 something you'd use for crappie?
Yeah, Bandit 300s, Picos, and the Jinko crappie cranks is all about the same.
Oh, Jinko.
But I like the Pico, the color. It's got a little more flash to it, a little better paint job.
Ah, okay. Yeah, we like glitter. Fishermen like glitter. Any other questions, folks? Nothing yet? Okay. So what's the crappie schedule, the tournament schedule? It kind of takes you when and where, and how many events do you have, and how are you kind of making that happen every year?
So far, we've been to, let me see, National Championship was in Louisiana in February. Then we went to Grenada in March, Eufaula in April. Ross Barnett was the last one in June. We had one on Kentucky Lake in May, and then we got one this weekend on Sardis. Then July we go to Erlin, and that'll get us done until September.
And then the next season starts in September?
The ending up of this actual season, like there's a couple like Midwest Crappie Alliance, the Wally Marshall tournament, the bigger individual big tournaments is in the fall.
Okay. When do you actually get to find out if you're the defending and you win the Angler of the Year again?
So the last tournament on the National Crappie League is in September on Grenada, and that'll be when it's decided. We got a 8-point lead right now with 3 tournaments left.
Is it a 1 point per place deal?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's your worst finish so far this year?
7th.
That's pretty impressive. And you said there's 30 to 60 boats in those in every tournament?
There's been as many as 60, and most of them's around 30 average, and then the last one they had, I think there was 24 in it.
Okay. What's the entry fee for a crappie tournament?
National Crappie League's 500, the Crappie Masters is 350, and then the Wally Marshall big tournament's 5,000.
$5,000 entry fee? What do you win at in those individual tournaments? What's the top prize?
In the National Crappie League and Crappie Masters, 7,500 for first, and it's based on the boats on the Wally Marshall. It'll be a lot of money though.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of money. Where is the Wally Marshall tournament this year?
It's in Missouri on Table Rock.
Ooh, that's a fun lake.
In November.
It'll be cold, but it's fun. It's a great lake. What's your favorite lake to go just fishing on?
There's some small lakes in Belgreen, Alabama, the BCDA lakes. You heard of them?
I have not.
It's kind of like little watershed lakes, and there ain't a bunch of big crappie there, but you can get a limit pretty quick.
I'm sure one of the other questions here is, what's your favorite recipe for crappie? I know you're fishing tournaments and you don't kill those fish necessarily, but I guarantee you eat them, don't you?
Yeah, it's hard to beat fried with Chef Rondé's seasoning from Louisiana.
Where can they find that?
At chefrondé.com online.
Okay.
They run the special now. If you buy 6 bags, it's free shipping.
You're going to be eating a lot of crappie if you got 6 bags of it, right? All right, any other questions? All right, boat setup. Tell them about your Predator right now, and then